Hi, my name is Clay Tumey, and I am an ambassador for Enneagram Prison Project. As we approach our 10th anniversary, we thought it'd be fun to sit down and have a chat with all the people who've had a major impact along the way with EPP. In this episode, I travel again to California and sit down with EPP board member and my friend, Eric McCluskey. If I open those drapes right there, I wonder if that would give, because I do feel like is it distracting that I'm silhouetted?
It's not. I mean, okay. I know what you look like.
Okay, cool. Hey, well, bummer. You don't need to, I mean, who really needs to see me? Anyways, it's a podcast. We're just sitting here chatting, so.
We are dressed for a podcast. Or for radio.
That's what I told Russ when we did our that episode was we were in our, what we called our podcast clothes.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, literally, I have socks on. I had like sweatpants and a t-shirt.
Well, this is now the corporate uniform. This is COVID dress. This is Zoom world. So yeah. Except everyone has their outfits now that just go from their shoulders up. So.
Yeah, I don't have any Zoom calls. There's nothing below the waist anymore.
Nope. That's right. You don't know what's going on down there. You probably don't want to know.
You probably don't want to know. Probably don't need to know. It is a waste. It's a waste up world. Well, thanks for sitting down with me today.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm looking forward to this and seeing what we all chat about, and probably know the drill from listening to the podcast. Who knows when it starts? But I think a good place is to say who we're talking to today. So, who are you, and why are you here?
Yeah, I'm Eric McCluskey. I would say in the EPP context, I've been a board member for. Next to Susan, the longest of the current board. I joined about 2016, but I would say before that, I got to be one of EPP's biggest admirers and have, had a chance to really, maybe have a unique view of it in that if you look at the board or most of the community, I tend to be less in the day to day. And so let's say, I've had many years, but maybe more looking from 35,000 feet.
Gotcha. What got you involved? I mean, I know that you knew the Olesics prior to EPP, and there's some personal connections at that point.
Yeah, that go way back.
Yeah. So how do you know them all the way up until even EPP? Like, why are you interested? Why do you care?
Yeah. It started. I mean, like you said, I knew Rick and Susan mostly through our kids, and I think I met both of them at a circus party they were having at their house, and I didn't know either of them, and they had this great event where all the kids did all these, it was kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if Rick had a big part of setting it up, and I understand it was an annual event of theirs, but the first person I remember meeting was Susan, and that first meeting, probably a lot of first meetings with Susan, a lot of people you say hello and you tell them your name, and it's just like, you're an inch to a foot deep, and with her, like, hello, and looked me in the eye and said, I've been meaning to meet you. And it was like 100 miles deep. I've never had an intro that has stood out to me like that intro. And, and I've just binged all these podcasts, and I think, most people in this community who know Susan might know what I'm talking about there. Yeah. So there was that initial meeting, like, wow, there's something here. There's a quality there. There's a connectedness there that I can't remember experiencing much in my life, and especially on a first meeting. And then, and Rick, I got to know a little bit better because he was the assistant basketball coach for my daughter. And, Susan talks about Rick is fun dad. Well, Rick was also like fun coach. And so I remember my daughter, she was the youngest one on the team at a tournament, and Rick was the one who, she couldn't go to like the team dance. And so Rick was the one setting up, buying ice cream and setting up games and having all these alternative things for her to do, so she would have a great time while all the older members of the team, went out there. So, way before I even knew about EPP, it's like, wow, these are two quality people that are just special,
Yeah.
And then I just, we would cross paths. I did a few kind of, Susan would have Enneagram kind of sessions in their home, not this one, but the one before in Los Altos. And I got to be part of some of those and really see what an amazing kind of Enneagram teacher she was. But, we were at an event at the school. They just had this holiday event, and I happened to run into Rick and Susan, and I just started talking to Rick, and Rick just started talking a little bit more about it was when he was just thinking about getting out of his old career and really going full-time into EPP.
Yeah.
And he talked more about what I do. And what I do is I've been really in finance for startup software companies for close to the last 30 years. And so that's a lot of like sitting with entrepreneurs and CEOs and figuring out how to take a company with 100 people and turn it into a company with 1,000 people or 10,000 people and grow from 50 million in revenue to $1 billion in revenue. And he was like, wow, that's a background. We're trying to grow this thing at that time. It depends on how you define EPP, but I would say it was definitely less than 10 people. In some ways you'd say less than 5.
Yeah.
So at first it was like, Eric, could I just pick your brain? And so we just started to have these regular meetings at a Pete's in Los Altos. We kind of had our table. It's a fairly, busy Pete's and a lot of, you'd say Silicon Valley type meetings there, but somehow when we would meet there, it seemed like our table was always there. And I'm sure that table's still there. And the discussions about what EPP would look like when we were 5, 6, 7 people, depending on how you define it, and where we sit now, that's how it started. And so we would meet there fairly frequently. And then about a year after doing that, and talking through the model and how would this thing grow and how would the finances work, Rick said, listen, we've been looking for another board member, and we'd really like you to come in and do that. So
that's a lot. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
And I think where my curiosity first goes is you talk about being in software related business for some 30, some odd years, so you were there at the beginning of it. Like you know a thing or two about that world, and scaling from a few, I'm paraphrasing what you said, but from a few million from the millions to the billions.
That's right.
I don't think I knew that you were around you were in those earliest conversations about scaling up. And correct me, by the way, please, if I'm using the wrong terminology.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I don't even remember when we met. I know where we met, but I don't remember what year that was. So it all kind of goes together.
Yeah.
A lot of times for me.
I think there was an ambassador dinner get together in
Ohio.
Well, I think even before that, were you at the ambassador? It was like it was the original place they were going to have the village, and it was kind of I think it was a seminary, and
yes, with Marion Gilbert, I think was there, and there was a few other people.
Yeah, and it was kind of like when one of the first,
a long time ago.
Well, that was the day. I think that was the same day. I talked to Rick that day, and they were like, "Listen, we're having this event. You should come tonight." And there's so many stories like that. But so we were meeting the ambassadors that night. That's the first time we were at least in the same room together. So,
and then we literally shared a room.
That's right,
in Cincinnati. But we'll get to that later.
Okay.
I want to know about the earliest conversations about how to scale, how to go from a few people to how do we do this all over the world.
Yeah. And
I just from just a structural standpoint or a nuts and bolts perspective, or however you want to phrase that, like what did that look like to the person who might not know a whole lot about that, or even they do know about it and just maybe want to hear about EPP's progress along the way. Like how did it go from a few people at a pizzeria to now what it is today, which is it's quite a few people literally all over the world.
Yeah. And I'll start by saying it did not follow the path that so Rick and I were sharing Google Sheets. That's where we were doing it. And we were literally, and at the time, there was Elmwood and San Mateo and just the startings of San Quentin.
These are local jails, by the way.
Yeah. But the model was much more Elmwood after the original, let's pro bono start this to prove it out. They started, basically paying for the program, and the same with San Mateo. So at that time, the model was much more program revenue was coming in, and San Quentin was more the exception. Like, oh, and here's a place that as we hopefully are able to create enough capital, we'll be able to afford to do things like San Quentin. And so, and at that time, the huge question, I don't think there was any question the demand's going to be there. Because if you talk to anyone, if you talk to Neelam at Elmwood or any of the places we were, had the program, the feedback was such that, prisons and jails are going to want this. That was not the problem. It was not like, how do we sign up enough prisons and jails to do this? It was at the time, there was Susan, there was Suzanne Dion, and then there was kind of a part-time, at the time teacher, now guide. And that was it. So it was how, and I've heard this come up in other podcasts, how do we create another Susan?
Yeah.
And so it was
a problem. It was a concern.
Yeah. Because, and there's never going to be a Susan, right? But someone who could have the same, it truly is a diamond, because it's some combination of knowledge of the Enneagram and the kind of presence and openness. And there's just it's the qualities we see in our guides now, but at that time it's like, how do we do this? And do you go to professional coaching organizations and then teach them the Enneagram, or do you go to the Enneagram community and then teach them more of those other skills? And we didn't know. What we did know is that at least that time, that was going to be the tall pole. That was going to be kind of our speed limit. That was going to be what's in the gas tank. How many guides can we have that will then allow us to say yes to more and more, prisons and jails?
So then basically it was just a matter of having the supply to meet the demand?
In a way, that's what we thought at the time. And
did that end up not being true later?
Well, I think there has been a shift, and I think part of that has been due to COVID, but it's also because if I play it out and to me, and we would put in, it's like, Rick, what do you think? Could we get to 5? I'll call them guides now, but it was teachers at the time. Yeah. Could we get to 5 guides next year? And then could we get to 10 the year after? And then 15 the year after?
It sounds so small on this end.
Doesn't it? But then it seemed like, because think about it, to us, can we create 15 Susans in 3 years?
Yeah.
And, some of the scenarios might have had more than that. It's like then, and then there would be, well, on, what percent of their time will be, revenue generating versus we'll have to fund them. And then what does that mean for how much we'll have to raise and how big our fundraising has to be? But to me, there's no more significant event than I started to hear about Dana. Mm-hmm. And to me, and even though there were a few other kind of guides in the picture before then, Dana was the first that like, can we create someone like a Susan or who can play that same role? And even before I met her, Dana was like a hero. Yeah. It was like
the perfect word, I think.
Yeah, truly she is. And it's like, okay, if maybe there's only one Susan, but if there's one Susan and one Dana, then there have to be more, because, it didn't take us 10 years. Somehow this beam that we have out there is going to attract these people, and the diamonds will come to us. And then that just started to, all right, this thing that we thought was really going to be, create our speed limit. Yeah. Started to shift. We started to get momentum there.
I think Dana was one of the first people to indirectly teach me, because it wasn't her intention to do this. So I say indirectly, to teach me that it doesn't have to be Susan copy and pasted it a million times.
That's right.
That Susan is who she is, and there's not going to be another. And oh, by the way, there's also not going to be another Dana.
Yeah.
And now, years down the road, I can also say there's not going to be another Suzanne or another Phil or another, you can That's fill right. in the blank with a lot of these names. And it's something that I've kind of said as a joke, and also almost have to apologize in advance for saying, but I'm so relieved that it's not all on Susan's shoulders to be the teacher.
And it couldn't have been. The scale that we're seeing now, if that had been the path,
wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't have worked. This would have looked very different. And the thing I would say there is, that's the key. And to me, what Susan models, she's more like a conductor, and she even said it in she's like this organic conductor. And there's this rough piece of music in the class, but it's not like a Beethoven score. But she, it's more like jazz musicians, and they're just playing off each other. And she just knows how to, I just need a little help there. Yeah. Just keep you on.
And you're doing the physical motions of a conductor, that what they do with a symphony, as you say that.
But I think what she models is why, aside from, all diamonds, Suzanne, Phil, Dana, if I started listing, all down the list, incredible diamonds, unique skill sets, how perfect for the Enneagram that celebrates these 9 types or 27 types or every permutation that you can do out there. But there are different ways to be conductors. But the thing is, you're conducting, and the jazz musicians are, that's always going to be different every time, so why not a bunch of different conductors who are just all have their own way of letting the organic thing happen.
Yeah. And that's where the magic.
It's magic
kind of begins, I guess. So you, being a person who's familiar with business and scaling and all that stuff, it makes sense to know that piece of your background, and also to know that you were friends with the Olesics before all that being your work with EPP. Does it matter to you that this is an organization? Does the work that we do matter? Is it just like another, or not just another, but is it a, it's a puzzle to help solve, or do you care beyond the scaling conversation?
Yeah. Yes, in a word. So much. Even just personally, I would say in a lot of ways, this has been the hardest 5 years of my life, just with a whole bunch of things that have been happening in my life. And I often say, and like I said, I'm one of the least day-to-day involved with EPP, but without the model of what EPP teaches and what they've tapped into, I might have a completely different perspective on what's been happening in my life. And instead, I can stay really positive. I think I'm a really positive person. I'm lucky enough that there's a lot of darkness, but and we share a type, and they call it the observer. Mm-hmm. I observe way more beauty than I do darkness. And EPP is one of the things that allows that to happen. I think it's essential. It's such important work. I often feel, and I've said this to Susan from time to time, that this Enneagram Prison Project, it's a great name, but it undersells it, and it's like, and the way I used to put it is, I used to say, well, what's not in there, Susan, is but we've struck gold, or an oil well. And it's like, and it's what the people on the inside have to tell us. And I've started to think, rather than gold, it's more like it's pearls, because a pearl gets, you've got this hard shell of a oyster. And to me, that's the kind of the hard personality of a hard life. And, mm-hmm. But what that allows to, but the grist of whatever sand goes in there creates this pearl. And it's like, so that hard exterior and that hard life creates this, treasure, and if you think of it as a pearl that's hidden inside that, that exterior of a personality, and somehow, who would have thought, you go on the inside and it's a treasure chest. And and that's what we're feeling right now, is this extends to, the way we're able to leverage what we've found to not just on the inside. And I've always thought, like, this, this shouldn't just be, happening in jails and prisons. It's I can't think of a place where it's not needed,
Yeah.
So it's an absolute treasure. You can look around right now and see a lot of darkness, but this is like, I don't know of many beacons like this one.
And you mentioned that we share a type, and that is called the observer. And for the listener who might not know, I'm a type 5, and you're saying that you too are a type 5. And I also try not to say anything about the person I'm speaking with without their permission, but that's what you were saying.
Oh yeah.
So we both share a type.
No, we can go into any of that. Yeah.
So, and you made a comment that I think is worth digging into, as they say, or going a little deeper, as they say.
Double click.
Double click. That's the one. And you said that you can see darkness, or you can see beauty, and you choose to see beauty. And how is it a choice? Is it something that you can decide to simply do? And if so, how? For someone like me, who, I might struggle with that.
Yeah.
And if we share certain personality type characteristics, what advice would you have to someone who might even say, no, it's actually not a choice. I can't choose to see beauty. I'm only in the darkness. It's all I see.
Yeah. But I mean, even before we started here, and it's almost not a choice. I can't help but see the beauty. I guess the choice is to try and always access that. And I think everyone has their list of things where I'd almost call it, yeah, but. And so you could say, wow, just look at the headlines, even the last week, and the darkness. But it's yeah, but. And whatever that is for you, it could be Beethoven, it could be Seinfeld, it could be, La Sagrada Familia by Gaudi in Barcelona. It could be foosball. It could be the best joke you've ever heard. But it's like, yeah, but, and the way I think about it is, I don't know, there's a lot of darkness, but I always think of darkness as kind of finite. It's like, even if you take what's happened recently in the Ukraine, and it's all been done before. It's a script. This is a dark script, but it's like, I don't know, it seems like everything dark has kind of been done and it's just being repeated, but the light just seems infinite to me. It's like, it's limitless, because it's, there's no limit on what's going to come next. That's this new, feat of imagination of humans, and including, EPP, and watching this, how 3 or 4 people have exploded into what this is and what is going to become. So whatever those things are, for me, so much of it is nature. So much of it is, I don't know, there was a period there when things were really hard and I had some time to myself, and I went to about 40 national parks and monuments in a period of 3 years, and I had the ability to do that. And in every one, I just go walk through the canyons or the mountains, and just number one, it takes all these problems that seem so big, and you just, no, this mountain doesn't care, this stream doesn't care. And yeah, it's big, but this just keeps going. And then the other thing is, for 4 years before COVID hit, I commuted to Utah. So I would get up every Monday morning at 3 a.m.
Committed to Utah in terms of your career? My
career.
Okay.
The job I was working for, the company was based in Utah. They still are. I still work for them. But I would get up in the Bay Area. I would catch the 6 a.m. flight from San Jose to Salt Lake City, like every Monday morning. And so that, if you think about that flight, you're getting in your plane, you're watching the sunrise over the Sierras, because you're hitting the Sierras right around 6:30, 7.
Yeah.
The sun's coming up. But the thing, it's, you're looking down at the earth from 35,000 feet, and you're seeing mountains, and you're seeing canyons, and you realize, like, in a way, these are the scars of the earth. The things that we find so beautiful are where, like, the plates are coming together and creating this mountain range, or you're going over the Colorado, and it's where this endless flow of water and ice and, have created this canyon, and you kind of go, wow, destruction, and that might have been dark at the time, or the erosion, but it's creating the beauty. So, like, destruction and creation it's the same thing, they're synonyms in some ways, right? Because by very definition, something hard is happening and something's changing, but something new is being created. So something's being destroyed and created. And so it's almost like those are the things I try and reference. It's like the lessons of the earth, and that change is coming, do not dig in, but it's rare that I can't find a way to find, what they call the silver lining, some way to look at it that's like, wow, so what's coming? So this is a really hard time. In my experience, really hard times lead to some, there's something around the corner that could be really good if you choose to, be open to those things that are coming. I don't know if that was helpful or
I cannot. It's funny as you're saying it. I'm sitting here thinking I can't wait to be able to rewind this over and over and over and hear everything that you just said, because there's a lot.
There's a lot.
That's
one thing. This 5 mind. It's like it's if you find a way to open, that little crack, look out. So I feel like it's flowing a little bit. So
yeah, and I'm not here to get in the way of it, by the way. And so I will say the one phrase from all that just struck me the hardest was the mountain doesn't care. No, it doesn't. No, in the streams and all the other things that you mentioned.
They've seen it all. Yeah. There's this, another one of my favorite places, Clay, to go. One thing about California is you have the biggest trees in the world, those giant sequoias sitting there in the Sierras. You've got the tallest, the redwoods up but then you also have the oldest. You have this ancient bristlecone grove. It's in the White Mountains. It's almost to Nevada. And, these trees are, the oldest one is called Methuselah, and it's 5,000 years old. So before like the pyramids, 5,000-year-old living thing that has been that living thing. And, and how did they find that? They were doing like climate, my understanding, it's called the Shulman Grove. And I think Shulman was a scientist, and they were doing climate studies, and they wanted to see what the climate was like 2,000 years ago. And so they dig into these trees and they count rings, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is 5,000 years, but so how do these trees live that long? They're on the hardest, it's not hospitable territory, right? So what it means is that to make it through every year, they have these extra tight rings that, okay, it's a tough life. There's not much water. There's not much.
It's a tough life.
It's a tough life. And that's how they're able to live that long.
Yeah.
Right. So you can, but what do you get out of that? It's the same thing with the pearl. They can tell us things no other tree can tell. This tree that's living right next to a stream in a beautiful, it's got these big growth rings, and then the parasites can get in or whatever disease. Nothing can touch these trees. They're absolutely beautiful, and they have these stories to tell. And that's another way I think about EPP and what we struck. And, so I guess I'm getting to the beauty's everywhere. It's just paradigm.
Yeah. And it's actually, when you say that, the reminder there at the end that the beauty is everywhere, I just realized that in the last, probably 8 or 9 minutes, I haven't thought anything about darkness. Yeah. And I've only thought about all the beauty and wonder of the things that you've been describing. So perhaps there is something there to be said about choices.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, I don't know, they say maybe the gift of the 5 is clarity. I don't know, after doing 57 years of observing, the clarity that's coming to me is, man, there's a lot of beauty. Yeah, there's a lot of darkness, but man.
Yeah. And
we haven't even, you can spend your whole lifetime, you won't touch it all.
All right. Hey, it's Clay, and I know we're only about halfway through this month's episode, so please stay around for the rest of the conversation with my friend Eric McCluskey. But first, I'm pausing here to let you know that today we are introducing a new feature to the EPP podcast called Words of Appreciation. Now, before I share with you this month's Words of Appreciation, I want to take a few minutes and explain exactly what it was that inspired this new segment. A few weeks ago, I was text messaging with my mom, who has started making her way into the Enneagram community over the last year, and more specifically into some of EPP's programming. And for those of you who might not know, that involves quite a bit of technological integration because most of EPP's programming is done over Zoom. So while talking to my mom about her new techie setup, she randomly made a comment about one of our mini tech wizards, Jason White. Completely unsolicited, my mom suddenly shared with me the following. She said, "By the way, Jason is the kindest, most tolerant person." Now, my first thought was, yeah, no shit. I know Jason, and this has been my experience and basically everyone else's experience, so welcome to the club. But of course, I kept that to myself and continued reading the rest of my mom's text message where she detailed a particular tech issue that she was having and how willing Jason was to help. She said to me, yeah, when I got back on, he was so cool about it. He told me what to do if it happened again, and he acted as if it were no big deal. The more I read my mom's text message about her experience with Jason, the more I realized just how much I take people like that for granted. People who add such a wonderful value to this world without expecting anything in return. So for our friend Jason White, whose main role among many with EPP is support, we would like to support you with words of appreciation that have been collected from the many people that you serve in Enneagram Prison Project. These are listed in alphabetical order, and amazing will be listed twice, once with the A's and once with the F's. I think you can do the math. Let's get started. Amazing, brilliant, caring, clear-eyed, collected, compassionate, competent, conscientious, considerate, dedicated, deep, dependable, diligent, driven, earnest, friendly, fucking amazing, funny, generous, gentle, graceful, gracious, grounded, hardworking, helpful, honest, humble, idealistic, insightful, integrity, kind, loving, organized, patient, powerful, pure, respectful, servant, sincere, smart, striving, strong, supportive, techie, thoughtful, trustworthy, and willing. And I'll tell you actually that when I started messaging people, so many people said the same three words: patient, kind, competent. So many said those three words that I actually had to start saying, hey, can you give me three different words? Because we're getting the same the same three words over and over because of just how patient, kind, and competent Jason is with the people that he's helping. And although I did only ask for three words, I do want to share with you an entire paragraph that was shared with me by one of our EPP guides. And this is what they said. When Jason smiles, he lights up the room with his tenderness, his insight, his compassion. His humility can be zen-like at times, which is an inspiration to me. And he's one of the most knowledgeable people I know on a wide variety of topics while successfully ensuring that someone else seems to be the smartest person in the room. And a few more words that they shared were unrestrained, honest, giving without condition or consideration. And I think that this particular guide mentioned something at the end that sums the whole thing up perfectly. All the words that you could use to describe Jason, if you could only use one word, that word would be love. Returning now to the conversation with EPP board member Eric McCluskey.
I really wish I could just mute my mic and listen to you talk for an hour or so. I'm curious about how did you decide or realize, or whatever word we want to say there, that with the Enneagram that you resonate most with type 5. There's a lot of people who I'm learning are listening to this podcast who are fairly new to the Enneagram world. So they're a lot of times going through that experience very recently, or even in the process now. So if you're up for sharing, what was that like for you, learning what a type 5 was, or did you think you were another type first? And what was that process like for you?
It was really different for me. I might have even been introduced to the Enneagram before Susan. I was in college, an undergrad, freshman year, and my group of friends and my girlfriend at the time, they were really into the Enneagram, and I knew nothing about it. But they would just all go, oh, you're such a type 5. You're a type 5. You're such a type 5. I didn't even really know what it meant. They would, and they would talk about their types, and I didn't really double click at that time. But I was just like, okay, whenever someone, and it didn't come up very much because that would have been mid 80s, right? So it was still
before
just
software even.
Yeah, exactly. So there was, there wasn't as much of a forum for it to really, go where it has now. But whenever it came up, oh, I understand I'm a type 5. I don't really know what that means, but so when I was reintroduced, which was as a parent, and I think there was, before Susan, there's another local teacher who was, I think there was some kind of parenting content to her Enneagram, but she would bring in the concept and talk about the types. And it was the first time I really got to know all 9 and hear the description. And honestly, at first I was Yeah, I could see the type 5, but I also resonated so much with 4. And there was a time that I was really, am I a 4 with a 5 wing or a 5 with a 4 wing? And just living in it and seeing panels and then doing panels to me was really where, no, I'm a 5. And I never did a 4 panel, but I would watch the 4 panel and I would relate to so much. But my core, where I go, where I retreat to, the way I, it was 5. So it's almost like I had it, thrust upon me, but then it was confirmed much later.
Gotcha. So for just, I'm imagining that there's somebody who might be kicking around those same thoughts with themselves right now and wondering, and by the way, I experienced a lot of the same with the 4 and the 5, because I too am a 5 with a 4 wing.
Yeah.
And learning about the 4, I think it was a struggle for me to really understand a lot of it, but I did connect with certain pieces of it. And with me, what ended up being the case was that, yes, I'm definitely very clearly a 5. And then I also, in addition to that, really experience a lot of things that 4s experience, just not quite to the same degrees. Therefore, 5.
I think it's very similar
with a 4 wing. What are some of those things like? I mean, for me, I think it's so much. I don't know enough about 4 to say what all those things are.
Yeah.
The way that I do about 5. And for me, with a 5, I love to understand how things work. I like to know the answer. And it's less about identity and being unique and a lot of the other things that I think are perhaps even unfair stereotypes of the 4. So I don't want to speak to that, but that's what it was like for me. Do you remember any of those things for yourself?
Yeah. And I would even go, it's not just that I like to understand, it's I almost have to. It's if I haven't figured something out, then you're not going to get and Dana used this term once and it stuck with me. It's the muddy 5. It's I haven't had a chance to synthesize yet, and I have a whole new set of inputs, and I'm muddy, and so it's almost survival. I need the clarity just so I can turn this thing off that's churning in my head, which I'm trying to, usually I describe it as trying to get to synthesis, and what I tend to do is get to a model. You've heard some metaphors here. Metaphors to me is just one super helpful model to me because it just simplifies. It's, it's like, out of all this stuff, 90% of it isn't that important. There's the 10% that I really need to put together, and the rest is the noise part, to me, a metaphor tends to do that. On the 4 side, it's what you mentioned. It's all that, and it relates to the 5, but it's this lots of contradictions. Like, I really want to be invisible because it's much easier to observe when you're invisible.
Right.
But I really want to be seen.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be praised, and I get very uncomfortable, but I do. Yeah. But I want to be acknowledged. And so this, I want, and here's the other way I think about the 4. I think if the 5 is like this idea factory, or this, this just, and to me, I've said it before, it's not, I want knowledge, it's, I want understanding. But then once I have that understanding, I think of the 4 as like my paintbrush. Then I want to present it in a way that's going to be unique, that's going to stand out, that I never want to describe something the same way twice. Like in my job a lot, I end up explaining financial concepts to groups, sometimes finance people, new finance people, sometimes sales heads, some, people who know nothing about finance. They say I know nothing about finance, teach me. And every time I do that, I never go back and say, oh, I'm just going to use this set of slides that I used 10 years ago, even though that was really effective.
Yeah. I was not really a copy and paste kind of guy. Yeah.
And so it's why, I see a Robin, and he's so visual in how he puts stuff together to just hit you between the eyes. Yeah. And I find myself doing the same thing. And it's funny, I find myself using a lot of the same kind of symbols and metaphors that Robin uses. And, and we were at a board offsite, and I was talking about, wow, it really feels like THP, the new place that we're going, is these seeds that, are being spread out. And, Susan just kind of goes, yeah, well, Robin just came up with the dandelion with the seeds, and it's kind of like our logo for, and there've been more and more. So it's fun and exciting and a challenge. And also I think it always makes it new to use that Ford paintbrush to like find a creative way to take all these ideas that I'm excited about and then find a great way to really share them with other people.
How important is it to you? And I struck in the moment. I feel like I'm doing a panel now. I'm not. I'm just curious how important is it to you when you're in that solving phase or that figuring it out, the going from the muddy to the clear? How important is it? Why can I not say the word important? Like, what the hell is wrong with my mouth right now? How important is it for you to be by yourself rather than to have a partner in that? Or is it at all?
It's really important, yet there's a but. I have my whole life, it's like I need to think means I need to be alone. You know, I need the space. Even I can't even do it with, and I love music and I listen to music all the time, but if it's music with lyrics, you know, if it's music, if it's classical or whatever, okay, good. But I find myself following, you know, I need all the headspace to go work this problem. That said, and it's why I've heard Russ talk about this and even you, and there are things in the moment that interaction with another human, you just go to places you never would if it's just, and it's because there's a way your mind works, but then someone else's, it just throws a wrench in and you'll probably go down a path you never would have gone down. And so many times, like I travel a lot and same thing. It's like, it's the mistakes that lead to, or the random, you know, things that where you get lost and you end up learning this new thing that if you had just been able to follow your instincts, you just never would have got there. So though I acknowledge that, you know, the bulk of the work happens within, and I'm, you know, pointing out my skull here, that external input, I always call that, it's almost like it hyperspaces you to like a whole new area that you never would have got to. So I know doing a panel, I learn more about myself on a panel sometimes just because of the external influence and someone making an observation that just, it's grist for the mill, you know? Yeah. And that's how the real work happens. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I relate to it 100%. I think at a glance, I prefer to be by myself. It's more fun to me. Yeah. It's actually probably less accurate to say it's more fun, and it may be more accurate to say that it's less dangerous to be by myself. And I feel that I don't have to worry about judgment from others. I don't have to, all the things that I make up in my brain, I don't have to worry about any of those because I'm just me, myself, and I. It's one of the things I struggled with as a musician was to do work and creatively with other people because I just didn't exist well with, I didn't play well with others. And in addition to that, in a completely contradictory way, I absolutely love interaction like this, or
it's
even
clear you do. And
riding with Rick in the car earlier. We're coming up the hill to the house here and we were talking and it's my favorite thing in the world. And then he wants me to hear a song and I want to hear it to the extent.
Of course he does. It's Rick.
Exactly. And by the way, with Rick, you're not going to hear a song.
No, you're not. We listened to like 5 hours of Dred Zeppelin when we went down to Carlsbad Cavern. So
it'll be first. Here's one of my favorite stories. This is totally off the rails here, but there are no rails. We are the rails. So, and he was like, "Oh, you got to hear this." We were talking about airbags and car crashes and stuff like that, or something to do with that. And he's like, "Oh, you got to hear this podcast I heard." So he looks it up. We're 15 minutes into the podcast, and I don't understand why he's letting me hear it. And I finally am just like, "Dude, this doesn't sound." It's like, "Oh yeah, this is the wrong podcast," but we'll just finish listening to it anyways. Like, dude, like, so it's a podcast, it's a song, it's all these.
I don't know.
Different...
I think you might know, but you know, Rick and I have a standing, you know, it's been a while now, 7 a.m. We call it Pete's Coffee. We kept it going. It's our virtual Pete's Coffee. So every Thursday, 7 a.m., it's Rick and I for an hour. And that is the most fun, random, like there was this ride at...
that could be its own podcast
it could. The places we go. And one of my favorite rides at Disneyland was Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And that's what that ride was like. You just had no idea. And it was like the quick jerk this way and that way.
Yeah.
And and the thing about Rick, you know this, you go down a path, he's going to know something about it. There's no path you can go down where he's not going to know something about it.
It's pretty wild. It's actually kind of scary.
I also have to remember for tonight, I think I have a couple, like when we were driving in one of the Suburbans in Ohio, and it's you and Rick in the front seat and I'm in the back seat. And I videoed a couple of just the banter between the two of you. I got to find that just to take you back there. Cause I was literally like, the two of you were like a married couple. I think.
I bet, yeah. Especially if we got to talking about, there's no telling. I feel like in a lot of ways he's a brother with me, and we do. And that's the thing. Like we were coming up the hill talking, and I enjoy this. And we were actually probably, I don't even know what we were talking about, giving each other hell about something. Who knows? And then the song pops up, and I go, you know, and we listened to the song. It was a good song. Like Rick, when you hear this, I'm not like crapping on your song, so don't take it that way. But in talking about how I prefer to be alone and left to myself, my favorite place actually is a place where I'm engaging with another person. Yeah. And the safest place that requires the least amount of energy, blah, 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 all that is me being by myself. But when I'm truly the happiest is this, what we're doing right now.
Yeah. And I think the key word you said there, and to me, it's the key to EPP before the Enneagram, before it's safe. It's the safety. It's what you described about if I'm in a group of people and or bandmates and I don't know what they're going to be doing, you don't feel safe. And to me, almost a way as a 5 that I find, I'm hardly ever bored. Like if I have time alone, I crave it because then I can go finish working through the things I haven't worked through, and and I've always got a list. And the only time I can think of that I'm bored is spending time with someone who's not present or genuinely there, who's small talk would be, because to me, that's okay. I want to be polite. So you're taking the cycles of my ability to process.
I need that. I need to borrow some of that. I don't have that because my thing with small talk is fuck this. I'm out. I don't care.
And I know people like that too. And I'm very, it's like, yes, but that's even a safety there. It is. And it's like, and that to me is, I've never been in a group like EPP, like when we had the IEA in Oakland and we had the get together at Blue Bottle at the Mehens, and usually there's no more terrifying place for me than to walk into a big, room with 200 people. And literally there are times I'll walk halfway in and turn around and just say, I need to go walk around the block. And I'm just not ready. That just doesn't happen here. I could be, and to me, it's the presence. I just don't have small talk with people in this community. It's, and so same thing. I hear there's an EPP event. I'm excited. I'm like, okay, this is like going to be the grist for the mill, and just giving people hugs. And what an amazing kind of accumulation of people, but then in a place that's safe. I've created this environment where when you feel safe. And I feel like, so if you go EPP and safe is the core, there's part of me that keeps thinking, and I was thinking about before we got together, is it true that when people are safe, love just happens? I'm starting to almost feel like, and it might not even be just humans. I see animals, and when they're not safe, they're in no loving place, but I almost feel like you see a dog or but when they feel safe, the love starts to happen. And
I agree.
And I think it's the same thing with people. If you can get them to safety, there's just so much fear. If you can feel safe, good things happen. And, that's what EPP is amazing at, creating a feeling of safety.
Yeah. And not just out here either. Hearing all that, granted, COVID times are different, and hopefully one day, and here's a phrase you won't hear very often in very, very many places. Hopefully one day we're able to get back into the prisons and jails and do what we do. Yeah. And I think it's coming. It's just a matter of when, not if.
We got to get back to the pearls. But
have you been inside before, by the way?
I have, yeah. Less than 10, but yeah. I first went in Elmwood and I did a 5-panel. So that was my intro. And so it's where I got to learn. And
your first time in prison, in jail, was to go and answer questions in front of people the other inmates that you don't know.
That's right.
And that had to be an experience.
And I was out there with, 3 other 5s, I think, and Susan, and it was about 50 guys in the striped, I think the striped uniform there. And and I felt so safe. I felt, well, just going in alone is the trust factor with Susan.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone I met, the depth was closer to that first meeting with Susan than with if I went to like a cocktail party of Silicon Valley. You know,
when you say everyone you met, you're talking about the inmates there
that's
doing
right.
time.
Yeah, yeah, and just walking in and just feeling completely. There was an early ambassador. He's not an ambassador anymore, but it could have been Chad but one of the first events I went to that was EPP. He talked about something. The way he put it is, everyone comes to the class, we sit in a circle, and he said, then the angels come in the room and enter the room, I think he said. And that's kind of what, and I'm not a religious person, but there is, it's almost like some combination of the Susan factor, and also because the Enneagram it's uniquely about being human. So it's almost like, well, we're all humans here. So we all have this way that we're all equally human. So there's no hierarchy here. And it's this paradigm in this place that we can be safe. And to me, that was the angel he was feeling, that we can all and then when we're present, we can be vulnerable. And when people are vulnerable, what you learn is that people don't go, oh my gosh, you should be ashamed.
Yeah.
It's like they find the thing in themselves. Oh my gosh, you've let me feel okay with this part of me that I was holding back on, or I have my armor up against, and magic happened. You know the magic I'm talking about.
Yeah, of course. And it's funny you say that about the angel. And that in my book, I actually describe what it was like walking into the room the first time that I met Susan. And there was, and I don't remember verbatim what I wrote in the book, but I know that I wrote about there was a certain glow. It was like this very angelic being. And that was before anything was even said.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is also before EPP was a thing. She was just the Enneagram lady for us. Like, that's what we called her, the Enneagram lady. Yeah. And it was her second time coming to that prison, or to any prison. That was the first place on the inside where she taught. I was at the second class. And so there was a group of guys who were in the first class, and they just spoke very highly of her and about the Enneagram in general. And of course we had wisdom, so I was able to thumb through that a little bit, but I was also at a point where I was super open and just like there to check out whatever, but I was, I can totally relate to, I think you're talking about Chad Christ, I think was his last name.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And I like his, if I'm remembering correctly, it was a 4. I like his description of that with the angel just kind of coming down there, because that's what it feels like.
It is. It's palpable.
Yeah. It's not normal, especially on the inside. You don't usually, like, people think about prison and jail, and it's a pretty cold, dark, lonely, like miserable place. And the thing that I usually say is, if you're having a bad day in jail, good luck getting anybody to care, because everybody's having the worst day of their life. Like, and nobody cares about you.
Yeah.
So I think it's a trip that experience can happen on the inside, where you feel safe and you feel like this is an okay place to be.
Well, and the sense I have, and I've gone in probably a lot less than definitely everyone on the board, and is the reason it happens, and you tell me if this might be true, is because you talked about when you got out, like the littlest things, like I want some gum, or I want to take a shower with barefooted. With my barefooted. Yeah. But if you extend that, and I go to Vic saying, the first thing that got me was Susan said, "What do you think, Victor?" She used my name, Yeah. So to me, it's, Rick and I, one of the things we've been talking about on our Thursday is Joni Mitchell a lot, because she's one of Brooks's favorite performers, and he's been playing her a lot on his show. But, she has this song, Big Yellow Taxi, and it's, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And beyond gum and, showers and bare feet and
the important things in life.
But if you get or Vic, your name is starting to get to, we take being human for granted in a lot of ways, and the way we live. And the sense I get when I go inside is, let us slap you across the face. What a gift that is that you take for granted. The choices you can make, but also what it means to be human, what it means to have a name that someone's, and that is part of this pearl. It's like that it's the magic. It's like you're coming in and you're you're reminding us of our humanity, and you're kind of giving it back. And when we're in this room, it's restored and we're all equal humans. But then everyone that walks away, because everyone I know involved with this, they say, I'm getting more out of it than I put in. And I think I've had a lot of, inmates say, I just don't believe, I don't understand. But that's not hyperbole. That is so true, because it's this reminder, man, there's so much I take for granted that I do, you said the air smells different when you come out, or, and it's like
the grass feels different on your feet.
It does. And the other thing I loved was Dustin talking about, man, I had so much stuff I got back. And isn't it, I mean, we don't need all this, if you live very simply, I'd love to go up in the Sierras and take a backpack and just stay all alone by a lake for 5 days.
Yeah.
And I have that experience. You talked about how fast people drive when you get out, after years.
Yeah.
Even after 4 days of sitting by a lake and it's just me and the marmots, and I come out but that's it. And I haven't even been talking to anyone, and all I've been hearing is the birds. Everything seems loud and fast. But do you have to go all the way back to all this, so there's so many lessons. Like it's okay. You take it all away, and then when you come back out, you learn what's really important. And that's a gift. It's not, that's what we need to learn. That's what we need to be reminded of.
Yeah. I love the idea of being secluded like that in the Sierras, like you said, for that many days, and then driving feels different after just a few days.
Yeah.
And it's funny how fast 40 miles an hour feels if you go long enough without going 40 miles an hour.
Highway 395, and it's like people zoom there. They're going whatever to Mammoth, and it looks different, and it's the same speed as when you drove in 5 days ago.
Yeah, it just feels different because of the reference points have changed.
Yep.
Or they went away completely.
Yeah,
I suppose. I mentioned earlier Ohio, and that we'd get back to it.
Yeah.
I'll say that one of my favorite memories, not just with you as a friend, but also just in general with EPP as an ambassador. We were in Cincinnati. There was, I believe, an IA conference was there.
Yeah. We
were all at the White's house there in Cincinnati, or the Cincinnati area, and there's enough space at their house for quite a few people to stay.
Yeah, there is.
And quite a few people
and horses and
horses, you name it. We were all there, and you and I shared the loft.
Yeah.
And I slept, I think, on an air mattress in the floor, and then you slept in the bed. And the loft, this is one of many rooms where people were sleeping, was like, it's a small bedroom type room. And we had met perhaps before that, but we didn't know each other super well. And my thinking generally is, I've shared cells with people that I didn't know 30 seconds ago. I'm cool with it. I mostly feel concerned for the other person. Like, I don't know, I don't always know how people will like talk. Like, I don't know how to say this right, but like, will it be weird for them to talk? Like, will they think that I don't have anything worth, just small, like, and knowing that you're a 5, because I knew that then. Yeah. And no, like, small talk is like sacrilegious to me as far as, and so I don't know. I remember thinking, like,
I don't remember a lot of small talk.
We talked, and then it was so funny. And this is one of these things I told Vic and them after the fact. I think Eric's done some time, because the funniest thing about that was we talked for a little bit, and it wasn't small talk, but it was like we were talking for a while, and then at some point it was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go to sleep, and then that was it. Lights out, go to sleep. And that is how it is on the inside with cellmates. A lot of times it's just like, I'm done, and now it's time to. And it was so funny how seamlessly it just went from conversation to, there was no like ending small talk, like, okay, well, all right, well, I hope you get some good. None of that. It was just like, all right, I'm done. Yeah. Like, all right, cool. And I wish I could remember what we talked about.
I think there was a lot about kids, if I remember right. Here's what I'll say. I had one anxiety, and that is I've been told I snore. So I was like, I just don't want to keep them up. That's really all that I was concerned about. So
I think you told me that.
So the fact that you slept,
and I grind my teeth.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So the fact that you slept, I was all good. After the first night, it's like, okay, I'm not going to be keeping them up. I'm good.
The only time I've ever been woken up by somebody who snores, I had a cellie, and when I was in the feds for a little bit, and he snored so loud, and this will sound like exaggeration, but I promise you it's literal fact.
You're going to test the mic now?
He snored so loud I could feel the vibrations in my bunk. And I was like, what this mother, he's dying. Like, it was so, and he was like a small dude too. That's the weird part. He was a tiny dude snoring like he was fighting for his life.
It sounds like maybe you got a free massage, like he used to put the quarter in.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Well,
no, he got woken up actually.
That's what I said. This is the beauty, man. It's the points of light.
But no, I sleep. I don't, the noises and stuff like that. I don't think that I ever slept lightly, but even after prison, especially, I don't really struggle with that. But I'm the same, except I grind my teeth, and I probably snore too now. I don't know. I don't have anybody to tell me to stop.
I'll be your, roommate again in an instant if you'll have me.
I thought you were going to say Sally's there for a second. I was
I thought of it, but that wouldn't quite work. But do you remember what I called that room after we came back? I was like, it was the observation tower, man. We were really up there, the two observers.
Yeah, well, that's because it's on the third. It's on the third level. Is it third or second?
Kind of. It's two and a half.
Yeah, I don't know. Their house is really like creative how it's up and down. But this is at the top level. Yeah. And then there's also there's the doors that open up, and then there's also this big window thingy over here. Yeah, observation tower. That's what it. And I got that's like what they have in prisons too.
Well, there you go.
I forget. I'm drawing a total blank on what we would call those two. Not the watchtower, but something like close to that. I enjoy talking to you, man. I think you're super interesting, and I don't want to leave without covering anything that I've left off or anything that is worth talking about. Are there any questions that I didn't ask that you want to answer?
Not that I can think of. What I just say is, and I talked about this concept of man, you can just go down the list of appreciation for, what's created. First, what's Susan and Rick. It's not just. I know what they could choose with what they're worth in the marketplace and the job. It's not just, what is Rick making now? It's what, or Susan, it's like the life that they could have and the second and third homes and all these things that as we sit here looking out at Silicon Valley, a lot of people opt for, the thing that gives me hope. And, I am, I'm a fear type, I part of me not jumping in here is, not having the bravery to make that full jump and just say, I'm going to go do what Rick did. I'm going to go do what Susan did. And then go down the list of everyone here who has said, this is so important that I'll let go of a lot of these things, a lot of the more material, options that I could take that I'm choosing not to. And if I started listing, I wouldn't get there, but you just talked about the whites and what they've brought here and the Mehans and the ambassadors and the whole community here is just so inspiring and I appreciate them so much and I just everyone listening, those who we've already had on these podcasts, those who are coming, I can already think of it,
Yeah. Who's it going to be, by the way? I'm going to ask you that in a minute, who we should have on in future episodes, but go ahead, continue what you're saying.
Okay. Just gratitude, just as a board member and as a huge fan and as someone always looking for hope and beauty. The examples here are I can't sit here and list them all. There are so many, and it's only getting bigger. And what an amazing thing to be part of.
I generally give at the end of every episode uninterrupted. Just you have the floor to say whatever you'd like. And you probably touched on a lot of what you would have said right there. I'm still going to give you that space in a moment. But before that, I'm curious, who would you like to hear on the podcast?
Well, one that pops in my head is Halida. Yeah. Because, what she has done with we talked about the shift of, what we thought this model was going to look like versus what it is. And now how much giving and I just, she's, even though she's not a board member, she's in pretty much every board meeting and it's just such a huge part of what we do. if you just want to see the beautiful power of an 8, and, and at their best, just like, I met Halita. I was, one of the things I really wanted to do, I've always wanted to do, was go to the top of Mount Whitney, which is the highest peak in the Sierras. And I was training for that. And I took a spill down a smaller mountain here, and I sprained my ankle. And I was here for a board meeting, and Halita was the first one. I'd never met her. She's like, here, put all, I'm not a small guy. Here, put all your weight on me. I'll help you walk out to our board meeting that we had out on the hill out there. That's Halita, so
Yeah.
but I mean, so many. I mean, the list is probably 150 long, and I probably haven't met half of them. We've grown so much. So
same. There are quite a few people, and even that I haven't met. I will say that Halita has given me a yes.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of scheduling. And I messaged her recently and was like, hey, so are you down to be on the podcast? Da, da, da. And she said, yeah. So, when the schedules work out, and I hope it'll be soon, because I think very highly of Halita as well. Yeah. And I think that she's just worth hearing from. So hopefully that'll be soon. Hopefully that'll be next episode. Who knows?
All right. Didn't even know that.
I can't speak for her, but I'm just saying out loud what I hope for.
Yep. It'll happen.
But man, this was a lot of fun. And you can see the timer here. This probably doesn't feel like we've been sitting here that long.
No, it doesn't. No.
Time flies.
I told you the dam, man, be careful. If you see that little crack, don't.
Well, this is not, we're not limited to just this. If you're down to come back on another time, and we can keep going. I think you have a lot to share, and I think you're one of those people who you have that quality, like kind of like Russ does, where when you start talking, it's like, I just want to listen. Like, I don't even. I
feel that with Russ every time, any chance I get. I
feel that with you.
I feel that with you too. So, and that's, it's almost like you said, how to wrap up here. It's, I don't know. I keep thinking, like, they talk about types. Are you a head type or a body type, or I don't know. Part of me thinks, aren't in some ways, aren't all humans a heart type, especially in this community? And then just that other type we talk about is just how you protect that heart, and so some people protect their heart with their heart, and some use their head to protect their heart. Maybe the two of us, and some it's their body. But I just want to say, and I feel that so much from you when you do these. It's as a head type, I just feel your heart. I just feel your interest in people, and to me, it's something I used to write in a journal is, I have elemental words, and to me, elemental words are ones that are hard for me to, define, because they're elemental. So, and one of those used to be love, but I think it was Byron Katie said, someone asked her, how do you define love? And she had a one-word answer. She said it was connection, and I binged listened to these over the last week because I was behind. I had heard a couple. And so, I feel like I have done that, that Netflix binge on the Clay podcast, but I'm just feeling this, this connection, this, and the things you light up at it, I just feel the heart, and I feel it right here. And it's, I think it's part of why I think people are just enjoying these so much. So thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I don't know how it's turned into this regular thing that I get to do and get to go places and get to talk to people, but I absolutely love it.
And everyone else I've told about it who's listened, they're like, "Oh, this guy, he needs to keep doing it." So people that don't know you, but they want to.
We talk to some of them too. We might just open it up and start just talking to whoever.
Let's do foosball, and we'll do the.
Don't tempt me with a good time. People here, we've mentioned foosball a couple times now. For those who don't know, I'm into competitive foosball, aka table soccer to some people, but we call it foosball, and I love it. So I'm down. I'm always down to talk with interesting people about things that I care about. You certainly fall into that category. Thanks again. I'm still going to leave you with the last word, even though you've already kind of wrapped some things up. I think I've
had a couple last words.
You're going to get the last word. This is just how we roll. I'm not going to say anything after this. And first, before that, I again want to say thank you. I think you're so interesting and fascinating to just listen to, and I appreciate you. And thanks for sitting and chatting with me today. and however much time from this point forward you want. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, I'll just say thank you, Clay. And I'll just say, yeah, the beauty's out there. It's, it's just, and so many in this community see it, but it's always out there. So, and it's infinite. Thank you.
For more information about EPP, please visit EnneagramPrisonProject.org. We appreciate your time and attention today. Stay tuned for future episodes, which you can expect on the 12th of every month as we continue to tell the story of Enneagram Prison Project.